Okay, yesterday we had the second Republican primary debate. It was the CNN debate to follow up August 6th Fox News Facebook debate. This was a very, very different debate than the first one. And interestingly, it was different in terms of not only how the candidates acted in the debate, but also as far as how the network treated it. Fox News taking a sort of approach where it was just very transparent that they were, number one, just trying to get candidates to argue with each other, and then number two, taking a very anti-Trump point of view. And while CNN clearly was trying to sort of stir the pot and get people to respond to criticisms from other candidates, they did actually make an attempt to get into some political ideas and press candidates on, would you be for this or would you be against it? The big criticism I had was some absurd questions, like what would you like your Secret Service code name to be if you were president? Just a completely ridiculous question. And also just way too long, Lewis. I mean, a 3-hour debate.
It was way too long, but I'm going to disagree with you. I think I liked that question. I think it's important to have some insight into the actual character of these people and try to get some type of reaction out of them that might not be the reaction of a normal politician. And
I think that's fine, but if you're going to go 3 hours and throw in those questions, maybe you could do 2.5 and fit in some questions that sort of bring out the character of the candidates without having to extend it the extra half hour. You know what I'm saying?
I agree. And, I would have liked to see more questions, maybe not questions like this one, maybe other personal questions as simple as what do you do in your free time? Although I guess if you ask that, we could expect to hear some red meat.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, I can't even imagine what Mike Huckabee would say. I mean, I guess he
said
spends
he
his
reads
time
the Bible.
reading the Bible. That's exactly what came to mind. Yeah. Some really bizarre exchanges. One about the Spanish language. Donald Trump criticized Jeb Bush for speaking Spanish. Jeb Bush said that speaking Spanish is okay. And then Marco Rubio, who has Cuban roots, decided he didn't want to miss an opportunity to jump in. And he interjected with, well, my grandfather spoke Spanish and he was conservative. So there's not necessarily anything liberal about speaking Spanish. And then one of the most laughably ridiculous moments was when Donald Trump said, hey, I would build a wall on the Mexican border in order to curb undocumented immigration. And then Ben Carson said, Donald Trump's idea of building a wall will not work. I would build a double wall with a road in between, and that's the plan that would work. I mean, just a almost cartoonish exchange.
It was very silly as the wall itself. But we were expecting to hear a bit about the wall, so we did.
A lot of attacks. Interestingly, Carly Fiorina only attacking Hillary Clinton. Carly Fiorina given the opportunity, and we'll get to this later, to fight back against Donald Trump's comments about, can you imagine someone with Carly Fiorina's face as president? And she opted to take the high road, instead choosing to attack Hillary Clinton. And as I watched, Lewis, we talked a while back about that $500,000 donation from a Ted Cruz super PAC to a Carly Fiorina super PAC. And we hypothesized, well, Ted Cruz and others may have an interest in keeping Carly Fiorina there because as a woman, she can criticize Hillary Clinton in a way that maybe some of the male Republican candidates cannot. And at almost every turn, Carly Fiorina turning whatever question it was into an attack on Hillary.
Yeah, which is really unnecessary. I don't see the point in attacking Hillary or Obama in a Republican primary campaign. Presumably everyone watching is going to agree with you anyway. It just seems unnecessary.
Totally unnecessary. And let's discuss some of the actual policy ideas that came out of the debate. Scott Walker wants to balance the budget and cut taxes, and he wants to avoid bankruptcy. He also says he would repeal Obamacare on day one. Really nothing notable whatsoever from Scott Walker. Chris Christie had essentially no ideas, just touting his record, and there was sort of a discussion about whether his record is good or not or whose record matters. But Chris Christie's lone idea that I saw was that he has been vetoing tax increases in New Jersey, and he would keep vetoing tax increases if he were to be president. Donald Trump actually gave some ideas, which was fantastic because we hadn't really heard much of anything from Donald Trump. He said he wants to let ISIS fight Syria. He says we should do something about North Korea and their nukes. As I mentioned, he wants to build a wall on the Mexican border. He wants to kick out all 11 or 12 million undocumented immigrants, which is, of course, going to be completely impossible, outrageously expensive. And interestingly, he wants to cut taxes on the middle class and raise them on the top income earners. as he would on his friends, as he said, the hedge fund managers. He also went the Herman Cain route, Lewis. When he was pressed for some specifics, he said, hey, I'm going to hire the best people to advise me on this stuff, which was a similar tactic as that which Herman Cain used in 2012.
Yeah, but and he wasn't afraid to say it. He said it pretty bluntly, but he really didn't have a choice. And it's not really the worst answer in the world.
No.
But at this point, you've been campaigning for how long? I mean, you should be able to come up with something else.
Well, he kept saying a lot of his specific plans will be coming out in the next 2 weeks, so I guess we'll keep an eye out for those. Ben Carson did have one reasonable idea, which is let's index the minimum wage to some economic indicator so we can stop debating the minimum wage every couple of years. I absolutely think that that's something worth looking into. Ted Cruz, his big idea was ripping up the Iran nuclear deal on his first day in office. Jeb Bush wants to appoint justices to the Supreme Court who would uphold the Constitution. Wow, Jeb, you're doing a great job of not being completely milquetoast and boring. Appoint justices that would uphold the Constitution. Carly Fiorina, Lewis, who I think did quite well, she had specific ideas. Most of the ideas basically were alluding to restarting the Cold War. That's okay. They were still ideas. Rebuilding the Sixth Fleet, rebuilding missile defense in Poland, military exercises in the Baltic states, and sending even more troops to Germany to scare Russia. Carly Fiorina, she's the Cold War candidate.
And she seemed very cold. To me, she just seemed kind of like a machine up there. I'm not kidding. She was sharp, but she was probably the most calculated of everyone up there, and she just seemed like a machine. Although,
Interesting
yes,
you say that she was like a machine, because I received a bunch of tweets from people saying that she seemed robotic.
yeah, she really did. But she did have specifics, and I applaud her for that.
John Kasich and Rand Paul were quite reasonable. John Kasich saying, hey, hold on a second. Let's not rip up the Iran nuclear agreement. Let's see if they violate it. Because if we want to do military action, if they violate the agreement, we now have a great pretext under which to use military action. I completely agree there. He did go off the rails when he suggested defunding Planned Parenthood. I mean, just utterly insane. Rand Paul said, let's wait and see if Iran complies with the agreement. Let's keep talking to Iran. Let's keep talking to Russia. Let's keep talking to China. Very reasonable. And Rand Paul also pointing out that we have this a terrible habit in the U.S. of toppling secular dictators and then bringing in an increase in radical Islam in many of those places. And that's something we should be careful of. So Rand Paul, he has a lot of crazy ideas. He got good topics in this debate that, at least with me, sounded somewhat reasonable.
Yeah, he nailed it several times during the debate, but then he'd say something that is completely absurd, like his flat tax. But yeah, that's why I think Rand Paul is one of the more reasonable candidates. But we're not going to agree with one of these politicians on everything.
Certainly not. I think the people that did the best were Chris Christie, I think, did pretty well. I think Rand Paul did do well, but I think my sensibilities may be different compared to the sort of average Republican voter at this point. John Kasich, aside from the insane Planned Parenthood comment, came off as pretty reasonable. And Carly Fiorina, aside from her robotic delivery, she dealt with Donald Trump well, and I think she also was a factor. She was a presence, and I think she did quite well. We will wait and see what the polls show us and how the polls change. The next Republican debate is Wednesday, October 28th in Boulder, Colorado. A lot can happen in 5 weeks.